Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Retro Collecting 101 with your host, Mark Flores. Today's topic, will the Nintendo Switch take the same route as the Nintendo Wii U? We'll take some facts from the opening day presentation of the Nintendo Switch, and we'll go ahead and analyze it and see what we can find here on Retro Collecting 101. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for listening to Retro Collecting 101. It's been a while since I've actually was able to get an episode out of the way, but the Nintendo Switch. The presentation was done about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and the only thing that came to my mind was wondering if it's going to take the same route as the Wii U. Now, the thing that we know now with the Nintendo Switch is that Nintendo as a company, Nintendo as a brand, now knows the mistakes not to make when it comes to unsuccessful consoles. Even as early as the Virtual Boy, Nintendo now knows not to make a console that looks like a pair of goggles. And now even with the Wii U, Nintendo now knows not to make a console that doesn't necessarily mirror that of the Switch. They know now that the Wii U was unsuccessful, and they even halted production on producing more additional Wii U consoles. There's a lot of good points to note about the Nintendo Switch. Mainly, the one thing going from disc to cartridge. Now, the cartridge is about the size of a regular 3DS cartridge, but a little bit bigger. And I believe that changing the format from disc to cartridge is a step in mentally disassociating the consumer from the Wii U itself. As you can see, the last couple of consoles have been disc-based. The GameCube, the Wii, the Wii U. Now, changing it up to the more successful handheld consoles, having the cartridge kind of mirroring that of a Nintendo 3DS and a 2DS and a DS cartridge kind of associates a successful console with this upcoming Nintendo Switch. It's the little things like this that is going to work wonders in having the consumer not believe it's going to take the same route as the Wii U. A lot of people think that this is a tiny, minute detail, but when you look at what researchers do before they even release any schematics or blueprints of a new console, they go into deep focus groups, they ask questions, they ask whether or not they would think that, various other questions anyway, including that of, do you think having a disc or a cartridge is going to make a difference in you believing that this is going to be a good move going forward? I believe that question was tackled in several focus groups already, and now that they have that answer, now we have the cartridge instead of a disc. Now, this isn't saying that the Nintendo Switch will be a perfect console. There's a few downsides from the starting line. Mainly, when you take it out and actually keep the Nintendo Switch in tablet mode, there's a lot of data swirling around saying that it's only going to give you 2 to 6 hours of gameplay, and that depends on how dense the game itself is. And another thing to mention as well is that there's no definitive launch titles as of yet. The only definitive launch title with an actual date is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Another negative thing to note about this is the fact that the accessories cost a lot of money. I was reading up on a few of the accessories, mainly $69.99 for an additional, for the ProPad controller for the Nintendo Switch. Now, this controller, to my knowledge, has now taken the ranking of probably one of the most expensive controllers I've ever came across. The accessories are a little steep, and it's a good idea from a business standpoint, thinking of from Nintendo's position, because when the Nintendo Switch is released, you're only going to have one controller, so you are going to be by default needing an additional controller if you have more than one person that's going to be using the Switch at the same time. But looking at it, like I mentioned earlier, from a business perspective, Nintendo wants you to buy additional accessories. So when you buy that additional one controller, you will be more tempted to buy another accessory alongside it. So that's another odd end. And it was so odd to realize that they were going to do that I had to note it as a negative point there. But there are some positives looking at this Nintendo Switch. There's 3 ways to play the Switch. You have 32 gigs of memory embedded into the Switch with an SD card that gives you about 200. It actually gives you 200 additional gigs up to, depending on what memory card that you get. And the games are not going to have a region lock as of yet. Keep in mind that these statistics about region lock are still tentative. I would imagine that to avoid some release date complications, that they might have to put a region lock on some games, not just all of them. Overall, we are how we should be for a Nintendo console, curious, anticipating for its debut. The Nintendo Switch is taking a route that's unfamiliar, and the best thing about Nintendo taking a route that's unfamiliar is that your curiosity is now taking even more precedent over the actual presentation of the Nintendo Switch. So when you go in, you might buy the Nintendo Switch. You might then get another accessory, get another game or two. So the Nintendo Switch as a whole, from its presentation to what we have right now, from the statistics that I have right now, to me it has a negative light. Simply because there's no launch date, there's nothing specific about it, and the expensive accessories. But the Nintendo Switch does look like a great looking console, but I need to be a little bit more convinced than what I have with just how good looking the console is. I need a little bit more than that, and it's one of the reasons why I'm kind of hoping the best for the Switch, but as of right now, for the $299.99 price tag, it's kind of having me shy away from the console as a whole. Having the console with one game and an additional controller at the $399 price tag would have been a lot better. But instead, they deducted one controller out, and now they have it at a $299.99 price tag. A lot of these next-gen consoles, like the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, have price tags upwards of about $300+, and depending what type of console, depending what type of additional features you get with your console anyway. So the Nintendo is kind of taking the same route as it's done with the consoles before the Nintendo Switch, where they make the price pretty much bare bones. There's little profit margin that they're going to get off of each console sold. Not to the light of the Xbox and PlayStation consoles, but we'll see from there. But this, right now, the Nintendo Switch doesn't look that impressive to me as far as me wanting to get one. Yeah, the console looks good and everything, but I'm kind of waiting on it a little bit more. But those are the facts that I got so far right now, and that's one of the episodes I wanted to get out of the way for Retro Collecting 101. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. This has been Mark Flores for Retro Collecting 101. Be sure to hit up our proud sponsor, Game Swappers. Game Swappers, buy, sell, and trade your retro games and next-gen consoles. That's PS1 through Xbox One. You can hit up Game Swappers on Instagram at GAMESWAPPERS. That's GAMESWAPPERS. Game Swappers, buy, sell, and trade.